Hey man, if there's one thing you need to master in modern dating, especially if you want to stay in your power, it's this: how to become the man she can't manipulate. Because the truth is, most women don't manipulate out of malice. They do it out of instinct, out of curiosity, out of habit. They want to know if the man in front of them is emotionally strong or just acting like it. If your validation is cheap, if your attention is weak, if your frame can be bent with just a little silence, a passive-aggressive tone, or the right button being pushed. And the second you show her that she can control your state, she loses respect. Not consciously, not maliciously, but slowly, quietly. And once that respect is gone, so is the desire. So how do you become that man she can't manipulate? You start by owning your internal world. That means your emotions, your self-talk, your reactions, all of it. You stop being the guy who lets her moods decide his mood. You stop over-responding to every little shift in her energy. If she pulls back emotionally, you don't chase. If she throws a passive-aggressive jab, you don't react. You pause, you observe, you stay calm, you hold your ground. Because once she sees that her energy no longer controls yours, you've just done something most men can't. You've reclaimed your emotional autonomy. You also stop negotiating for peace. Most guys, when tension rises, immediately jump into fix-it mode. They explain, apologize, over-communicate, all just to get back to a comfortable dynamic. But a man who can't sit with discomfort will always be manipulated, because now she knows if she pulls back, you'll chase. If she gets cold, you'll overpour. If she threatens distance, you'll fold. But the man she can't manipulate, he's comfortable in discomfort. He doesn't flinch at silence. He doesn't rush to explain himself. He sits with tension and lets her behavior catch up to his standard. Another shift. You stop explaining your standards. You enforce them without debate. If she crosses a line, you don't yell, you don't plead, you don't go into a 20-minute monologue. You just change your behavior. You pull back, you move different, you remove your energy. And when she asks why, you give her clarity, but you don't justify it. You don't water it down to sound nicer. You speak once clean and clear, and then you let the consequence speak louder than the conversation. That's how she learns not just what you tolerate, but what you never will again. You also stop over-validating. When a woman knows she can get praise, reassurance, and attention from you, no matter how she acts, she stops valuing it. Not because she's ungrateful, but because you've removed the link between her behavior and your reward. And when you keep rewarding her emotionally while she's disrespectful, distant, or manipulative, you're training her that chaos works. But the man she can't manipulate, he gives praise when it's earned. He gives softness when it's reciprocated. He doesn't starve her, but he doesn't feed behavior that violates his peace either. And here's the kicker. You don't just spot manipulation, you refuse to participate in it. If she tries to make you jealous, you smile and keep scrolling. If she withholds affection to punish you, you don't beg, you shift your energy into purpose. If she brings up other men, you don't react, you note it, and adjust how close she gets to your heart. You're not triggered, you're tracking, you're reading the pattern behind the behavior. And because you're not feeding her game, the game dies. And what's left is either a real woman or one who leaves because you stop being easy to control. You stop rewarding drama with dialogue. Most men try to talk through every little blow-up. They want resolution. They want mutual understanding, but not every situation deserves your breath. If she's creating chaos without cause, if she's turning small issues into emotional traps, if she's using tears as tools, you go silent. You let her stew in her own energy. And when she's ready to come correct, you re-engage. But you never reward dysfunction with immediate emotional presence. That's how you teach her. Access to you comes with alignment, not emotional leverage. The man she can't manipulate is also deeply rooted in his own validation. He doesn't need her to like him every day. He doesn't need her approval to feel like a man. He's not emotionally reactive to being misunderstood. And because he's not relying on her for emotional certainty, she can't weaponize it. She can't pull away to make him chase. She can't go cold to make him explain. Because this man's warmth comes from within. And a man who doesn't outsource his self-worth, he becomes impossible to destabilize. You also learn how to hold frame during her storms. When she's emotional, you don't match it. When she's accusing, you don't defend. You absorb without folding. You listen, you pause, and you respond from clarity, not emotion. And sometimes that response is, "We'll talk later," or "This isn't how I have conversations," or sometimes it's just walking away until she calms down. Not to punish her, but to protect your peace. And when she sees that your frame isn't moved by her chaos, she starts regulating herself, not because you forced her, but because your stability demands it. Eventually, she'll test harder. The moment she realizes she can't move you with silence, she'll use tears. When that fails, she might bring up your past. When that doesn't work, she'll threaten to leave. But you don't panic, you don't chase, you observe, because you've already detached from needing her to stay. And when a woman realizes that you want her but don't need her, that's when you become magnetic again. Because now she's dealing with a man who's emotionally bulletproof. Not because he's numb, but because he's deeply in control of his state. You have to understand this. Every time you reward manipulation with softness, you train her nervous system that drama equals closeness. That throwing a tantrum, going silent for 3 hours, or creating tension will be met with you leaning in emotionally. And if you repeat that long enough, she stops coming to you with truth. She starts coming to you with tactics. That's why the man she can't manipulate breaks the pattern early. He doesn't chase after emotional threats. He doesn't explain himself 5 times to the same passive dig. He doesn't validate disrespect. He goes quiet, he goes cold, and he moves on. Not with hate, but with unapologetic clarity. The man she can't manipulate isn't obsessed with control. He's obsessed with alignment. He's not trying to dominate the relationship. He's not trying to win. He's simply not willing to give love where respect doesn't live. That's why he watches more than he talks. That's why he doesn't blow up when he sees red flags. He just makes adjustments. He doesn't announce the shift. He lets his energy speak. He slows his responses. He limits access. He turns his focus inward. And in that shift, he becomes a different type of man. The type she suddenly realizes she has to earn all over again. And when she finally does realize that her old ways won't work on you, you'll feel the dynamic shift completely. The tests slow down. The games stop. She shows up softer, more open, more intentional. Not because she's afraid to lose you, but because she's finally realized manipulation has no power over a man who needs nothing from it. And that kind of presence, that kind of masculine containment, it's rare. Because you've now become the one man who can't be led by bait. You're only led by principle. And that, my brother, is deeply attractive. One of the most effective tools in your arsenal is emotional distance, used with precision. When she brings chaos, you don't collapse. You don't return her energy. You step back, you give space, you let her feel your absence. And in that absence, she starts feeling something she wasn't prepared for. Her tactics don't work on you anymore. That's the moment she either rises or disappears, and either outcome is a win. Because if she rises, you've built a new dynamic. If she leaves, you've made space for something real. But what you don't do, you never sacrifice your frame for her fire. And this doesn't mean you're emotionally unavailable. It means your emotions are disciplined. You don't give affection to disrespect. You don't reward games with softness. You don't reinforce emotional chaos with presence. You give your heart where there's peace. You give your time where there's consistency. And if either one disappears, so does your energy. No screaming, no guilt trips, no debates, just distance. And that distance becomes your signature. She doesn't get a second chance at the same level of access once she's tried to manipulate it. You also master the pause. When she says something to trigger you, you don't clap back. You don't match her tone. You pause. You breathe. You let the silence stretch just long enough for her to hear herself. And sometimes that's all it takes. She'll walk it back. She'll soften. She'll notice your stillness and feel embarrassed for trying to shake it. Because now she sees that her usual tactics, the ones that worked on boys, don't work on you. You don't flinch. You don't fold. You hold. And she feels that weight in her chest. That's how you reverse the game without playing it. The man who can't be manipulated has one rule burned into his bones. I don't teach through explanation. I teach through reaction. You don't say, "That was disrespectful." You simply pull back. You don't say, "I don't like games." You just stop playing. You don't ask for better. You reward better. And when she sees that everything in you is governed by action, not begging, not pleading, not lectures, she respects it. She trusts it. She either adapts to it or exits. But what she doesn't do, she doesn't play around with it. Because now she knows this man doesn't negotiate his standard. You'll start to see the world differently too. You'll stop falling for sweetness without substance. You'll stop getting pulled in by beauty that lacks character. You'll stop rewarding attention that hasn't been consistent. Because now your eyes are sharper, your energy is guarded, not in fear, but in strength. You see past the words, past the smiles, past the surface. You measure people not by what they say, but by what they repeat. And that discernment, that emotional tracking, that's what makes you unshakable. In time, this won't even be effort for you. It'll be who you are. You'll move slower, speak cleaner, let your stillness lead. You won't get emotional about shifts in energy, you'll just note them and adjust. You won't fight for clarity, you'll let her decide whether she's aligned. You'll stop reacting and start selecting, because that's what this is really about: selection. The man who can't be manipulated isn't the one who fights chaos. He's the one who filters it, calmly, silently, without drama, without noise. So remember this, man. Manipulation only works on men who need something: attention, approval, validation, control. But when you become a man who needs nothing but his own alignment, you break the game, you end the cycle, you become the one she doesn't know how to shake. The one she has to meet with peace, presence, and truth, or lose entirely. Because now you're not just a man in control, you're a man who can't be controlled. And that kind of man, he's not just respected, he's unforgettable.